What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Movie Dive. We've got a Halloween special today. We're going to be ranking our top 7 all-time Halloween films. Why not 10? 10 is too much. 5 is too little. And without further ado, it's Halloween season. What's up, guys? We are back. We are going to be doing a horror special here because it's Halloween season, and why not do a horror special? We have Matthew here. I'm going to preface by saying, in my opinion, I think out of all categories in film, I think horror is the most subjective. How you feel about things personally or how stuff affects you personally is something that's actually going to scare you. We were going to do a worst horror film list, but I feel like that is so extensive. I mean, he could do Jaws 3D. I could be like Chucky and Chucky Bride, the TV show. There's just way too much low budget horror out there. So we just decided just to stick to the top horror films of all time. So as we get started here, I'm going to go ahead and give some films or franchises that don't really make it for me. Always on the top of the list for people is Get Out. I feel that movie, to me, it's kind of like a Twilight Zone film. Doesn't really do much. I mean, I think it's a good movie. There wasn't a single moment in that movie that scared me. Horror franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street or Jason, Friday the 13th are not going to make it for me. Scream, I do love a lot of the Scream movies. Those aren't going to make it for me. Those are more go to the movies and have a popcorn fun time rather than something that scares me. Something like Jaws is not going to make it. That to me is more of a blockbuster film. I know a lot of people consider that terrifying, but just don't go in the water and it won't be scary.
I think like The Exorcist doesn't. It's still pretty scary. It's not going to crack my list, but I think it's worth mentioning just from a position of influence that it had on the entire genre. You know, it was William Friedkin, who he's not really considered a horror, movie director, and he just like mantled that as if he was doing another thriller. So I think that, just having someone of that level directing something with that material sort of put the world on notice about horror movies at an early point. The scariest thing in The Exorcist, other than the head turning around, is still the music, though. And I think, that's one thing that we'll talk a lot about as we move through our list, is like atmosphere, how the movie sounds rather than just like what's on screen, the sound design element, the score. So I think The Exorcist is definitely up there in terms of like classics. It's just not a personal favorite. One question: do you consider The Silence of the Lambs a horror movie?
I consider it a thriller, just like how Longlegs came out this year, and they're like I feel like the marketing was terrifying, but the actual movie was not as scary. So I feel like if there's bad reviews on Longlegs, it's because people expected this like terrifying movie, when in reality it was like Silence of the Lambs, more of a thriller film.
What makes something intrinsically horror, I think, is just going to be a conversation, especially looking at my list. I kind of do some like genre bending here and there as to like what actually makes up a horror. But like you were saying in the beginning, it's completely subjective. It's like, it's not just about like what scares you, but it's like what tone you respond to. Not just like the images, but the atmosphere as well.
All right, so now we're going to be doing our top 7 horror films of all time. Coming in at number 7 for me is going to be It Part 1, the original, not the one that came out in 2017. I think the reason that scared me so much is Tim Curry, I feel like, is so good at playing that clown. And it feels to me more grounded in the real world than the 2017 version did. 2017 version just had way too much like odd CGI moments in it. But the original one, since I saw it as a kid, a lot of scenes in that movie really scared me. I haven't seen it in a few years, but I do always remember every time I see it, it definitely creeps me out. The random balloons going places. And there's, I guess, a few characters in that I resonate with. I think it does a really good job at, since it's a small town, giving the small town feel and nowhere to really run or escape to. Don't know if you have thoughts on it.
I hate clowns, man. I can't do clowns. So
you hate them as in like they don't do anything for me, or like I just can't watch it?
I just can't watch it, bro. Like Terrifier movies, Art the Clown, all that. If there's a clown involved, I'm just out. It's not for me. I'm just I had a bad experience at a circus when I was like 5. That's just left me scarred with clowns. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, there's something about the original one, just like the way it looks with the old school feel and everything. So yeah. So anyway, go ahead, and you're number 7.
Yeah, my number 7 is The Witch. By Robert Eggers, 2015, if I recall. It's all about atmosphere. It's all about what it can conjure in your mind. There's like a hallucinogenic quality where you're sort of caught between believing what you see on screen or believing an old wives' tale. and it just taps into something really deep, especially from a faith perspective. You know, these are Puritans in the 1600s, and then they're basically coming up against a demonic power on their homestead. So it's not gory, apart from like maybe the last 10 minutes. It's all just unsettling. It's all about paranoia and what you can put your faith in. Such a unsettling, uncomfortable movie to watch that was still just like breathtakingly beautiful. Obviously, natural cinematography really lent into the setting, and then the sound design as well was just incredible. And I think this was Anya Taylor-Joy's like first
Hmm.
like movie. So, I mean, what an introduction to her as well. She was incredible and like played the turn perfectly. And one of my favorite endings. I think it's a really good ending to it. Sometimes I have a problem with horror movies sticking a landing, and I just think that that was a really good example of, okay, we've seen witches, okay, we've seen possession, okay, we've seen demonic stuff. How can we do this in a more folk way that feels true to the genre still? And I think it was just like the perfect way to end it, and just all the way through. I think it was a masterpiece.
No, absolutely. Instead of debating you on this, I'm just going to go ahead and say my number 6, which is The Witch. So I think the really cool thing I really enjoyed about The Witch, I remember going into it because I didn't know what the ending was. I didn't know, what was going to transpire in the film. And then we've seen so many Crucible movies in our lives, the one of Daniel Day-Lewis, or historical events of when America thought there was witches and they were putting people to fire and everything. So I honestly, for some reason, when I saw that film, I expected it to be another film where it's like the witches are not real and it's just like a small family who one of the girls thinks is a witch, but it's, they have to convince her she's not. But the ending of it, where it actually shows that there are witches, there's that terrifying scene of where they're going through the forest and there's that small house where the witch comes out. That's a very scary scene, I feel like.
Hmm. Hmm.
So yeah, definitely that's why Witch is on my list as well. Another one where it's, psychological, and it definitely shows a family going through something dark, deep, and that damn goat. Just because I thought that goat was so terrifying in that movie. But yeah, my number 6 is The Witch. So I guess, yeah, you can just jump into your number 6.
My number 6 is going to be controversial. It is the remake of Suspiria. I think the original is incredible. The Dario Argento original from the 70s, really good giallo horror. I just think that with Luca Guadagnino taking his like perspective, how he uses the lens, how he uses lighting, I think it was like the perfect way to do a remake that actually elevates the parts that were actually scary. I don't think anyone, well, at least in my opinion, I didn't watch the original and see like the actual like gore as something that was scary. It was more just the atmosphere that was the most haunting element.
Yeah, I've
And
never seen it actually.
okay, it's
Yeah,
it's quite disturbing, and I think it's excellent. And I know that a lot of people will probably be like, "What, you put this rather than the original?" But I just think the original, from a artistic standpoint, was superior.
yeah. Going on to number 5 on our list. This is a movie that I know would not be on many people's list. I do not care. I don't know why I love it every time I see it, and that is Stephen King's adaptation, 1408, with John Cusack. This is a
Oh.
film, yeah, a film that I don't know why the first time I saw it, I was like, this movie gets me, man. I told you about not knowing if you're going crazy or not. And I like movies that really dive deep into someone's psyche. It has a really good fake out towards the end of the movie where you're like, oh, he made it out, but he actually didn't. And I think, yeah, the movie does a really good job at playing with your mind. It's basically just one guy the whole time in one room. And I feel like John Cusack does really good at that. Not sure if you've seen
Mm-mm.
1408 or not. No. Yeah, it's not like a movie that's super high on people's list, but I feel like a lot of people who have seen it are like, yeah, it's very, very good. But yeah, definitely creeped me out. There's some scenes that get you. Some really good. I'm not a big jump scare fan, but there's some definitely good jump scares in that film. So that is, yeah, my number 5.
Dang. Would you say it's like underseen, or just like people sort of watched it and dismissed it? What do you think is like
I
the
feel a little
reason
bit of
why?
both. It was like a
Mm.
smaller budget movie again, because it's just basically Samuel Jackson's in it, but just in a small portion, just for marketing.
Hmm.
Basically, it's just John Cusack in a hotel room. He's a reporter who just he basically makes money going around like to these places that people say are haunted, and he just like debunks it. Like, you guys are idiots. Stop saying this. Like
Hmm.
I'll be like, there's this thing in the vent. That's why you think it's haunted, because you're hearing these noises. It's just a broken AC system.
Hmm.
And then he finally gets to this one and, you know, gets stuck in there. So you can't escape. And it's a lot of things happen in this room where he has to face like why, his wife divorced him, his kids don't love him, and it gets deep into his psyche while he's in this film. So
All right, my number five. So this is the Hitchcock that I'm choosing. This is the first horror movie I ever watched, and I think I was probably like 7, and
mhm.
it just terrified me. It's The Birds by Alfred Hitchcock, and a pretty straightforward premise. A seaside town, birds attacking. It's a pretty short like watch. I think either. Oh no, wait, it's 2 hours long. So it's like stretches out not much plot over 2 hours, just through terror,
Yeah.
honestly. Just like the idea of birds just like flocking and attacking. My wife's actually one of her friends from high school. Like his main fear is birds, just in general. So
Yeah,
I
I know
just
people
don't
like
think you
that as
should.
well.
Exactly. And I just would love to see people like that. It's kind of sadistic of me, just like sit down and watch the birds, and just see them squirm. But I think Hitchcock, the reason why Psycho's loved, the birds. Obviously, you've got other, more thriller movies that veer with some horror elements as well. He's just got such an eye for detail, which I think really makes up what a good horror movie is. That attention, where you can hone in on a key either character or a key moment, and it opens up the whole movie for you. I think that no director really did that as well as Hitchcock in his day,
Yeah.
and his craft, how he manipulates camera, background, obviously sound design as well. I think this stuck with me from early age.
I am actually waiting for horror to make a comeback in that genre. I feel
Hmm.
like Birds is a movie I'm surprised they haven't remade. I'm like
Mm,
shocked they haven't remade it. That and the movie Arachnophobia. I don't know how they haven't remade these movies.
yeah.
Arachnophobia was more recent, like in the 90s, but I feel like you could. Those are fears of people that no matter how many times you make those movies, it's going to get people. So I'm surprised they haven't
That's a
haven't
good
remade
point. Yeah.
those. I haven't seen Birds since I was really young. Since my dad played
Hmm.
it, I was like, oh, old black and white movie. I don't care. So it's another
It
one.
stands up. It stands up. It's a slow burn, but it is terrifying. So I definitely recommend it to anyone that hasn't seen it in a while.
All right, coming in at 4. This is by a director that has fallen off, as we all know, The Sixth Sense. I feel like how old was I when that movie came out? 9 years old, I think, when The Sixth Sense came out. And to
Mm,
see a kid go through what that kid went through in that movie, and if you watch it even more recently, I feel like it's aged so well through a kid that's going through something really dark and just no one around really just caring or listening. Then you have this other character who can't go on to the afterlife because of what has happened, like the trauma he's going through, the depression he's going through, and it's filmed so beautifully. I rewatched this movie and I'm like, how did this director make this? I do not understand. I just don't. You watch this and then you watch Trap and you just are so confused. When he's at that birthday party, he goes upstairs and there's the scratching you hear and the person yelling from inside the cabinet, and then the other kids throw him in there.
hmm
I think that's a terrifying scene. So yeah, number 4 on my list is The Sixth Sense. I'm not sure if you've seen it or how you think of it. Like a lot
Is
of
it a good movie because of the horror, or is it a good movie because of the twist?
I think the horror. I think the horror is very
Mm,
good. I mean,
hmm
anything that again has like an outside that's using an outside or using horror to portray a very dark outside theme that real people go through. The reason that people don't like M Night now, I don't think it's because of twist endings or anything. For
mm,
some reason, his dialogue is just so weird now.
hmm
Like they're not. It's
hmm
not real human dialogue anymore.
All right, my number 4, incredible movie by Andrei Zulawski. It's called Possession. You said you don't like movies about possession. This one's literally just called Possession. Um, Movie from 1981. This follows a man as he is trying to work out why his wife has left him. It's a really good dual commentary on anxiety. On the man's perspective, and then like feminism as well from her
Mhm.
perspective. What is a woman to a man, and what is expected of her. I think it's got some of the scariest unscary scenes. Like there's just like a long shot of her basically wailing and like throwing herself around, almost like a dance in a subway, not the sandwich shop, underneath the city. It's just atmosphere, and then it's got some of the most bizarre imagery you'll ever see. I'm not going to spoil anything for those who haven't seen it, but I think it's underseen, and those that have seen it love it for a reason. Sometimes the olds are the best, and I think this is just absolutely incredible. So yeah, Possession.
Moving on to number 3, I think this might be the greatest horror remake of all time, and that would be The Ring for me. This got it's not just like there's creepy moments or anything. I think it's just a really good movie. Gore Verbinski, which he came off directing Pirates of the Caribbean, decided to do The Ring, which, I mean, he showed in Pirates of the Caribbean he can be a really good director. There's certain scenes in the Ring that just truly get me. The tape is so scary to watch. But yeah, the scene where they travel to the lighthouse where they got Brian Cox, that is, guys, this is such a scary scene where he ends up shocking himself to death. Lines, again, going back to trauma, talking about how reporters take someone's tragedy and really use it to make their own money, and how it ruined his whole family. And I think that's just a really good movie in general, aside from being a horror. But yeah, so that is The Ring. That is on my number 3.
My number 3, this is where it gets controversial in terms of, is this a horror? Annihilation by Alex Garland. I think it is pretty clearly a horror. I know it's like got a lot of sci-fi elements, obviously, not just the horror scenes where, you know, we were just talking the other day about the bear scene, for example. That is genuinely terrifying in its concept and its execution. I think, you know, talking about like set pieces in horror, that's one of the best ever. But more going towards the destructive nature of humanity and like how we recognize ourselves, where our identity is. I think it was just an incredible piece of horror from like a surrealist perspective, like very abstract. Again, it came down to that atmosphere of just feeling uneasy. One thing I love about this movie, Garland, when he was adapting it, did not read the Jeff Vandermeer novel again. Nice. So he read it in the past and then decided to adapt it from memory, which then leads into this like dreamlike, sort of like shifting reality feeling that we get in the movie as well, where things don't always perfectly line up, but you know, the characters are misremembering their steps, misremembering who they are. So there is a real sense of like, what is reality, and what are we doing to the world, and this malevolent force that is coming out of, you know, them. And honestly, one of my favorite endings to a movie ever.
Legit moments in that movie where I truly am just like, I don't know how they did that or made that. I have a strong feeling our number 2 and 1 might be the same. Yeah, my number 2 will be Hereditary. Man, I didn't see it when it came out in theaters. My friends were like, you have to see it. It's so scary. I'm like, it's going to be another Conjuring. I'm not watching that. But then I watched it, and there's truly, truly terrifying moments. And I think a lot of it is in the camera work and in directing. Of course, the acting, yes, is amazing, but using shadows and wide angle lenses to really put stuff in the corners, like making your brain, sometimes there's something there, sometimes there's not. One of the shocking moments of all time is her getting beheaded. I would feel like 99% of other directors are showing it happen. They're not sticking the camera on Alex Wolff as he just sits there in shock in the front seat, and they just follow him as he goes inside. And then you hear the mom just yelling the next morning. That's how you make horror. It's not just like showing everything. It's sometimes what you don't show. But yeah, that's my number 2. What is yours?
My number 2 is going to be your number 1. So I think we can save that for a longer conversation, because I know you absolutely love The Shining. Shall I do my number 1 and then we can do The Shining?
Sure, why not?
So my number 1 is Alien. I think it's in my top movies ever. As someone that is not dedicated like horror lover, I think this stands out as the scariest movie, and just one that I come back to over and over and over again. It takes a while to get into. It takes like, you know, an hour before anything major happens. Once you actually get to the point of, oh no, they let an alien on the ship and it's going to kill them, it's just nightmare fuel the whole way down from that point. One thing I love about Alien from a horror perspective is that they really don't show much. And this is more likely because of the budget and the technology available at the time. You know, there's one kill where it kind of like lumbers over one of the characters and you can tell it's just a big piece of latex. Similar to Jaws, where, you know, the shark didn't work limitations actually push the filmmakers to excel in ways that are more revolutionary. So, I'm thinking of the last 20 minutes where Ripley's trying to get off the ship and she's got the flamethrower, the alarms are going off, the lights are flashing, the sound design is off the charts on that scene. By far and away my favorite horror, and then one of my favorite movies of all time too.
So then my number one, obviously The Shining, your number two, The Shining. Of course, the cinematography and everything is just insane in this film
Mm-hmm.
of making everything seem bigger than it is, making it feel like a maze. It's like so far above and beyond, like I think scariest thing I've ever seen still
I think
developed.
the Shining is like one of those movies where it's like there is pure evil on
Yeah.
screen. The Shining, there is like a malevolent evil force in that hotel. And whether you believe the ties to the ancient burial ground, the Native American massacre imagery that goes throughout. I know there's a lot of racist language throughout on
Yeah.
purpose. There is like something truly evil in that movie, and I think that's why it's so terrifying. It's the scene that will always stick with me is when Wendy sees the typewriter and realizes that he's actually gone insane, and she's like flipping through the pages. Is she like expecting to like see something different, like he's actually written something on like page 4 that's normal? I'm not entirely sure.
I
But
mean, that's crazy to think like the whole time he's been there, he's been putting the same thing down. That's a
right, it's,
scary
if
twist.
you like just like peel back layers of moments in scenes, that's when the real horror comes out, I think.
And even the intro, even the poster of it for some reason just
Yep.
makes me feel like evil. All right, guys, thanks for joining our top 7. You might agree with the list. I'm sure you don't agree with the list. Please comment down below and let us know. We'll be doing, I'm sure, another list. I think we're going to be doing a deep dive of Gladiator 2 when it comes out.
Oh,
I've heard great things. However, I don't believe them until I see the movie. And then we'll also be doing a list of our top 7, worst 7 of the year. That'll be coming out in late December. Yeah, comment down below, and we will see you here next time on the Movie Dive.